Today I'm here to talk to you about selling Umbraco, about those situations where Umbraco is not a requirement, but there's many CMSs in play, and you want to convince people to go with Umbraco. This guy is Theo. I'm his lookalike, thin beard. I'm a technical director at Grow Create. It's a digital agency just outside Oxford. We are a gold partner since the summer, and as technical director, I tend to take a lot of the meetings. I tend to do a lot of the convincing. So let's start with where we are. Niels talked this morning about 265,000 live Umbraco installations, but we need to kind of put that in context about where we are in terms of market share compared to other CMSs to see what it is that we need to accomplish, where we're starting from. You can see from that list, we're over here. It's actually not 0.8%. These are the open source CMS market share. Now, it's really hard to compete against these guys, I know, but we're quite low. There is a huge room for improvement, 99%, in fact. Now, you'd have thought that that would be, you know, the whole picture for all CMSs. Now, that is what you get from Microsoft Web Platform installers. I would have expected Umbraco to actually have a much bigger share over here, but even so, you still have got WordPress up there. We're not even going to talk about DNN, but it's still there. Umbraco is at 13%. Obviously, a lot better when it comes to Microsoft. Still room for improvement. So, we can do better. And why we want to do better? Because if there's more developers, there's going to be more knowledge sharing. It's going to be more fun. If there's more clients, more live websites running Umbraco, there's more work for everyone, more cash for everyone. We know Umbraco inside out. We're not going out there selling something that we don't actually understand. We are the developers, the people that come to conferences. And we know Umbraco. It is our task, our job to sell it. And finally, and this is what makes Umbraco easy to sell, is that we believe in it. I look somebody with a straight eye and just say, you really need to go for this. You need to consider this. This is, you know, I've looked at your business, your requirements, and Umbraco, and it's a great match. There is no lie here. I don't have to pretend or cajole anyone about it. So today, I split up the section into 4 parts. A few basic things that I follow when I present Umbraco to various people. A few tips, a few things that have worked with me in the past when I have to fight my corner in terms of comparing with other CMSs, other platforms. I'm going to talk a little bit about understanding the audience, the client, because we tend to think of the client as this box with a logo in it, whereas in fact the client consists of many different personalities and roles. And at the end, I'm going to talk about shifting attitudes. So these roles within the client, they come with their own attitudes against or in favor of Umbraco. So we want to shift as many of these attitudes to our favor as we can. I should start by saying that this is all tips that worked for me over the past. Everyone here who has actually tried to convince somebody to go with Umbraco will have different tips, and it's absolutely perfect, and I want to know about them. I want to come here next year and do another one with more tips that I learned from everyone else. But this is what has worked for me through the years. So let's start with presenting Umbraco. There is probably not a sales presentation in the world that did not include my great uncle Aristotle's modes of persuasion. Yes, not quite, but it's also rhetoric strategies. It consists of 3 things. It's 3 different appeals when you're trying to make a point. Ethos, which is appeal to our authority, our credibility, is where we put the logos up there, when we talk about how many years it's been around, all that. Logos appeals to the audience's logic. So this is where we talk about features and we list statistics and the bugs that we have fixed and how stable it is. And the last one is about when we try to appeal to their emotions or aspirations. And this is where things like testimonials and case studies come into play, because it allows the audience to put themselves into that situation, to kind of see, to visualize what the system will do for them and their working lives. What works for us, first of all, is to kind of start sometimes with the Umbraco creds, especially to people that don't know it. It's a good thing to start because it actually gives weight to what comes later. Sometimes you finish with that if the audience is a little friendlier. But you'd have things like all the logos that you get from the Umbraco website, some of our very own bigger names down here, is the things that lend credibility to what you're about to say. Inevitably, after that, we go into the features. Now, at this point, I should say that it probably makes sense as you get into your flow to combine the credibility with the features and the case studies. But at some point or other, you will list those features. And we are talking about the stuff that we already know here quite well. Umbraco, it's an open source .NET CMS that will play well with a lot of people. It's what you're there for. There's no license fees. It's free. I mean, we know it, but some people don't know it. They kind of still try to catch to see where the catch is. If you look at some of the other competitors, they seem to always have a catch somewhere. There is an enterprise backbone to Umbraco. It is important for bigger customers. And that's usually a feature that comes in because of our .NET heritage. There is Microsoft behind it. Therefore, there is a platform that you can build on as a big company. It is widely supported. Niels talked about all the good, UK has got the biggest number of gold partners. There is so many developers, so many .NET developers, so many Umbraco developers, so many installations. It's quite popular. It's mature and stable. It's on version 7. There are still bugs, 700 bugs fixed in a year, but it is actually very mature. It is very stable. It has gone through the motions. And the very last thing is flexible architecture. We know that this is why probably we went for Umbraco, because it doesn't tie our hands. It doesn't impose its own workflow on us. It lets us make the decisions, and then in turn, that lets us make better websites. So we'll tell them all that, but will they understand it? Maybe they understand it better if we tell them a story. This is a story that we usually tell. It's one of our clients. It's our favorite startup called Beerboats. This is Matt Lane. He's the founder. And it's an online beer club. Every week, everyone in his subscription base gets the same bottle of beer. They crack it open, they taste it, then they go over to Twitter or his website and they talk about it. He calls it simultaneous consumption. He's been around for a few years, and his model is about community and commerce. That's what he does. Where we came in was in 2012 when we built the first version of his website. Now, Matt came to us with a brief of, I really don't know what I'm doing with technology. I want to sell beer. I want to shift beer to people, and I want them to give them a platform to talk about it. So we created the first website for him based in Umbraco, and the story we tell over here in terms of selling is that the guy had a dream. He did not care about technology, but Umbraco delivered. And the thing is that he could deliver for somebody with essentially zero budget because it is open source. At the same time, I could go to him with a straight face and say, don't go for one of the other open source CMSs, because in a few years' time, you will want something a lot more complicated, and they might not be able to deliver. And indeed, that happened. What happened was a year ago, Matt went over to Crowdcube, and he raised £150,000 within 3 hours, all from his subscribers. It didn't even go public. It does so happen that Matt was in our office when it happened, and we were sitting over there as soon as he kind of the investment round opened in Crowdcube, and I was pressing reload, and quite literally, like every minute, $5,000 was coming down. Literally, it was raining money. It was good fun. So with all that money, he came back to us. Unfortunately, he didn't invest all of it onto a new website. He should have. But we built him a new website. And the point is that Umbraco, once again, had his back. When he needed not just a dream, he needed to build that, to convert that into a business, into a viable e-commerce model where all the payments are taken on the side, the community is a lot more developed, he needs to scale up because it's not about being a startup with 100,000 users, he needs to think about the next 20, 30,000 users. That's where Umbraco is there for you. So it tracks your success. So that's what we tell a lot of people, and I hope it works. Let's talk a bit about fighting our corner when we have to make the argument against other CMSs. Let's check that out, okay? The first thing that we'll probably have to do, especially when something like Drupal or something is in the room, is talk about .NET, why it's good. Talked about earlier about the enterprise backbone. Really is what it means is that it integrates with Microsoft technologies, and it is supported by Microsoft. It is the old argument about nobody got fired for picking IBM. It is a little bit like that. There is a certain amount of certainty, of assurance that comes with the Microsoft name because they they put a logo on it. So the argument that we're making is that although you can have your custom implementation, all very creative and mobile friendly at the top, and then Umbraco underneath it, which is nice and open source, and there is a community supporting it, even so, for a really stable implementation, it's reassuring to have that big name enterprise backbone underneath it all. It's great value for money, though, because there is not a single component that is not free. SQL Express is free, the tooling is free, the server is free. Windows costs money, but last time I checked on a server, on a hosting provider, they were charging $4.99 for a Unix box and $5.99 for Windows. It really isn't all that much of a difference. And it is a lot more popular than you think. It's a little misleading. I'm biased here. I'm trying to sound Umbraco. Okay, it's a little misleading, but it's still the IIS serving 1 out of 3, almost 1 out of 3 websites. So I'll kind of go into a little comparison with 3 or 4 different CMSs that you might find going against in a pitch situation. How do we compare with WordPress, the king in terms of statistics? WordPress is a blogging platform. It's a great blogging platform, but it is just for blogs. Umbraco is a business CMS, and the way that us in this room might kind of understand this is because we can structure the content and we can scale it out, and its architecture is completely different. WordPress has got a consumer focus. Umbraco has got a developer focus when it comes to how easy it is to the workflow of implementing it. So all the focus for WordPress goes into the ease of installing and get going. All the themes, get your themes down there. It's all point and click. There is, even the hosting is done for you. Whereas Umbraco does have a bit of a learning curve for developers, but it is much easier to change after you've gone past that stage. WordPress, and I'm talking about the website here, not about the APIs on the back. WordPress is about convention. Umbraco is about configuration. It's about giving us the power to satisfy requirements. They are quite literally not the same thing. The second one, which is a harder argument, is against Drupal. They're both all-round CMSs. Drupal is on the LAMP stack. Umbraco is on the .NET stack. That's where it starts getting a little bit hairy with some of the people in the room, because a lot of them will not understand that. They probably will not care very much. And to be honest, Drupal has got great case studies. It's really well supported. However, Drupal, because it is, this is the nature of PHP, and I know that this is a point of contention, that PHP is easy to do the easy stuff, but it's hard to do the hard stuff. Almost as a consequence of that, you rely a lot on plugins with Drupal. Not all those plugins are supported or upgraded when you want it to be upgraded, which creates a lot of dependencies. When it's time to upgrade, it's much harder to upgrade, in my experience, Drupal installation than it is to upgrade an Umbraco installation. We tend to build a lot more in Umbraco and install less packages. The next one I'm going to make, it because I have come across it a few times, is going against Sitecore. They're both on the .NET stack. Now, Sitecore has gone really wide on us. It used to be just a CMS. It's all about a user experience platform suite now with its analytics thrown in and commerce thrown in. It's a really big beast. Umbraco is still an all-round CMS, and that's where our focus is. It means that Sitecore has to support an entire array of tools, whereas Umbraco is just going to say, no, you know what? The community will do all this. We're going to focus on the CMS. I would probably say right now that Umbraco is a much better CMS than Sitecore is, but some people would go Sitecore because it is a much wider offering. I can understand that. It's not as good as CMS. Obviously, Sitecore has got fairly big license for a lot of organizations, whereas Umbraco is open source, so you have to think about value. We get a lot of people that tell us that what they do is they save on the license for Sitecore, or the equivalent, and then they go with Umbraco and they just pick the best developers. So instead of getting all that money onto a Sitecore license, they spend the same budget onto getting better developers, better and more developers. Sitecore really is for pretty huge websites. I think that this is where its value is probably coming. Whereas Umbraco has got a much wider client base, which is why it evolves a lot faster. Because we as a community, as Umbraco HQ, we learn from all these implementations that are from smaller to bigger websites. Whereas Sitecore tends to stick to the logic that it inherits for the big enterprise applications and the big enterprise use. Sometimes I can bring a table like that, put them all together. Umbraco ticks all the boxes. I mean, we want a business CMS that is open source on the .NET stack, assuming that's important for you and you understand it. It's got a developer focus, means that it's extensible, and it is future friendly. It means it's not just built for installation and then just carry on going. You can extend it, you can upgrade it, you can build many more things with it. It underpins your success. To go back to the story of Beerboats. Next thing to talk about would be about understanding the audience when we are in a sales pitch. I did talk about earlier about how a client, sometimes we tend to see them as just the one logo, just a client where we kind of go for a pitch, whereas really they are many different roles, personalities, motivations in there. Now, this is by no means either exhaustive or there at every single situation. I did try to find an average here to illustrate the point. You would inevitably have somebody in the room, bigger pitches now, anyone from a CEO or owner, head of technology, CTO, marketing director, project manager, marketer, content editor, designer, developer. They all want something different. They're all looking for something completely different. They go from really high-level stuff like risk aversion. I want something that won't give me a headache. This guy doesn't care about anything else. This guy wants something that's compatible with your systems, which is probably why you're in the room as a .NET, peddling a .NET CMS. The marketing director usually wants control. They want to be able to analyze everything, understand everything, put everything in boxes, talk to everyone. Different set of requirements from us, from what this guy wants. Project manager probably knows that when the situation in the project might go hairy, there's going to be many different people fighting for things. So they, to the extent that they have a voice in selecting the CMS, they're looking for something that will minimize conflict. They're looking for a nice relationship to work because they're the ones that are going to be channeling all the messages. Marketer usually wants to make a lot of connections to be able to do her job. She needs to kind of connect SEO to newsletters, to mobile campaigns, all that kind of stuff. Content editor, sheer usability. They want something that will let her do the job easily. The designer, as always, is worried that the CMS that they're going to inherit is going to limit their creativity or impose any kind of design restrictions on them. And the developer, like all of us, wants to do some awesome stuff. Now, all these people come with their own default attitudes. And I should stress here that this can turn around. This is for every senior person that is negatively predisposed for Umbraco. So I painted the marketing director here because that was the most usual scenario I've seen. Her friends are all using something like Magento or Drupal, so she doesn't see the point of sticking her neck out and going to say, well, let's pick something else. I have been in a different situation where the CTO was actually, I'm used to PHP, and she was like, yeah, but I've used Umbraco in the past. So, bear with me, it can happen different ways. I'm trying to illustrate the point. Few people are neutral. Usually, this kind of creative stack, because the French, the media that they consume, they tend to be focused on PHP. They are skeptical. They tend to think of .NET as something that puts restrictions, so that it's hard to use, inflexible. And it's usually these people here on the technology stack that they're more friendly to our messages, especially these two guys, because the Umbraco website talks to them, talks to content. You spend a lot of time optimizing the user experience. All developers here, the APIs are very friendly. These guys are going to be very friendly very quickly. One last point to make about the audience is they respond to different messages. These guys here, the senior guys, will probably want to understand, they want to get credibility first. You can talk to them about everything, but first you need to win their confidence. Further down, these guys mostly understand the rational arguments, the list of features and stuff. These guys up there, they tend, roughly, and I know that because my business partner is a creative director, he understands case studies. He responds better to case studies, to situations that he can put himself into. So what I've done here is I moved these guys over to a little matrix that plots them, the relative power of voice next to their attitude. As I said earlier, the owner or CEO sits at the very top. Marketing director tends to be negative, quite senior. CTO tends to be positive up there. The two creative marketing designer down here, content developer, and the project manager in the middle. So this is what I illustrated earlier. Now, the easy sell, and I've been there, this is the best scenario for whenever I've kind of just walked out of the meeting knowing that I had a job in my hand, not just for me, but for Umbraco as well, was when this guy was powerful. So when the CTO was there and he could impose his own rule, he would not even consult the others. He would just walk out of the meeting, you tick their boxes, and he would just tell everyone else, look, we're going to go with Umbraco, and it just so happens that Grow know it really well. So, that's done. It's done. I've been in that, and that's the easiest thing. That you don't really have to work on that. You just have to keep them on your side. This one, now that's hard work. This is when you have a really powerful marketing director who, for some reason, is bent on another system that one of their friends are using. They do not understand any of the technical points. And if the website's coming out of their budget, they're going to stand in your way. If you're in this situation, in my opinion, and there's more than 3 agencies running, I just wouldn't bother. I would just stop it. I would just go. I don't have time. You're not going to win this. This one is actually good fun because these are all the big, huge organizations, corporates. These guys are probably all in the middle. They're probably way further back. So it is the project manager that's supposed to be dispassionate and right in the middle that is passing the messages around. The bigger the organization, the more power the project manager will have. It's worth fighting this one, but it is going to get bloody. And this one is always bad news. Whenever the head guy is getting involved, it's not good for anyone. It's not good for you. It's not good for the competitors. It's terrible for the project. Because even if you win it, as soon as the project starts, everything is going to get delayed because he got involved and nobody dares speak until they do. So we talked about the attitudes that people have when they first get into the sales pitch. Let's see how we can shift this around. This is what has worked with me in the past. Now, this might kind of look a little bit manipulative, and it's not really. Well, it is. But we're starting with the attitude as we had them before. We're not trying to manipulate anyone. We're just trying to make the best case for Umbraco. If the organization we're talking to is a good fit for Umbraco, we know that Umbraco is a good product, it would be a shame to miss a sale because of miscommunication or because we haven't educated this lot well enough. Now, the first thing we're going to try to do, and this is kind of like starting already from the first call that we received from the client, is we try to figure out who is a head tech guy and whether they're involved. And then we try to leverage their authority. So to pick them up. First of all, try to win them. Give them the case studies, tick their boxes, make sure they like you. And then after that, leverage their authority. Keep talking to everyone else about what the CTO or your head of development said. Make the same points. If you can make everyone think like this guy, you've done the job. Now, assuming you have done that, and he's there sitting on the background, and you are speaking with their authority, then the next thing to do is to coach these guys. That's low-hanging fruit. And as I said, it's low-hanging fruit because the Umbraco website is already talking to them. That is who the Umbraco website, the Umbraco.com, is talking to. Lots of arguments about why it's good for developers, why it's good for content managers. It's easy to coach them, to give them the case studies, the training, the early training to get them on your side, to get them even more on your side. In this case, I'm illustrating that I'm making them enthusiasts of Umbraco. We wanted to be vocal, to actually go even against, to even nudge the others towards them. At some point, you'll need to cajole some of the creatives to come onto our side. They might still get stuck there. They might still kind of think, oh, I've designed websites in the past, and WordPress has worked really well for me, or I don't care because I just kind of like make things in Photoshop, but I care because can I connect this to Twitter? I mean, I have so many Twitter campaigns coming up. So just takes a few case studies. It really does. But put them in the picture, bring them over to your side. If it is a big organization, make friends with this guy. This is the guy that sits silently, humming on the corner, passing messages around. And I know that because my wife is one of them. And in theory, that's all she does. That's all they do. They just pass messages around dispassionately. But they're the ones who will be running the project. They're the ones that are going to have the personal relationship with you. They can so influence things if they like you. They're going to be the ones that will want to have that personal relationship. The relationship that if things go a little bit hairy, they know that it's going to be all civilized and we're all going to sort it out. So make friends with the project manager. He sits right in the middle for a reason. Now, the next thing to do, assuming that you are here, is to deflect this guy. We don't want this guy. You want this guy to kind of say, okay, well, I trust them. I leave it to you now. You do not want this guy in the room. If you are in that final pitch in the last meeting, so after the emails and after the proposal, and you're sitting in the meeting room and there's a big array of people and you're talking to them, it's much better if that guy is in there. That's because nobody else is going to voice anything until they do. And I'm talking about here the highest paid opinion, right? It's not necessarily a CEO, but it is the guy that, or the girl, that everybody else is waiting to hear from before they see which side of the fence they sit on. Now I have painted a picture here that through a series of emails, one-to-one sessions, the meet and greet with all these guys, the proposal, who the proposal is talking to, you have brought everyone on your side, leaving the hostile marketing director or any hostile senior person isolated over there. That is the job, and that has worked for us every single time of the proposal of the pitch meeting. During the pitch, you make lots of eye contact with her. You talk to that person, to the senior hostile person. All you need to do at this point is you don't need to win them over. It would be nice if we could, but you don't need to win them over. What you need to do is neutralize them. You just need to give them enough credibility, case studies, enough of an argument to just dislodge them from that position so that at the end of the meeting, after you're gone, they say, okay, I had a preference, but seeing that Umbraco ticks all my boxes and my guys can work with it, then I'm happy with it. So she moves, kind of goes quiet, sits in the middle, and all the argument is over here. If you manage that, and the few times that I did manage something like that, I knew when I was working out that I did have the job, and no matter what the CMS was. So, that was a bit of a journey. In closing, got some homework for you. I'd like you to think about marketing a little bit. We talked a lot about sales today, but marketing comes behind sales. Somebody defined marketing as the set of activities that sets the scene for sales, that give sales the optimum conditions for you to close a deal. So think about marketing messages of the CMS competitors. If you go over to all the websites, who do they talk to? What messages do they put out? People like Sitecore and all the commercial CMSs, they make different noises. Check your website content. We talked about different personalities and the kind of messages that they all hear. Before you go into the meeting, or before you even start the sales process, your own website needs to have your own back, right? So your content needs to kind of be aligned with that. Plan your next meeting or email based on some of the things maybe that you found useful from what I talked about here. Maybe you have an active pitch right now. Maybe something here can help. And if we can all close one new deal for Umbraco, get someone off whatever crappy CMS they're running now over to Umbraco, we're all going to be much better for it. Remember, when it comes to presenting Umbraco, people want the credibility stuff, they want the features, and they want the user stories, the case studies. Try to know what the competition is. There's going to be other CMSs out there. There's always a point that you can make. Umbraco is a great product. It's not great for everyone, but it is great for most business cases, and there is always an argument that you can make. Be aware of the personalities that are involved in there. It's not a monolithic client. There is infighting all the time. There's different opinions. And to close the deal, be aware that there are attitudes, there are pre-existing attitudes in those personalities that you need to shift in order to close the deal. So go get them. Thank you very much. Any questions? I literally ask that. There is two questions that people, that clients are generally not reluctant to share. One is they don't tell you how much the budget is, by and large, but they will tell you who has the who's purse string, who's holding the purse string, and they will tell you who are the stakeholders. And the reason for that is because it's usually somebody like the project manager that initiates the meet, or a procurement person, business analyst, and it is in their interest that he or she doesn't look an idiot in the room. So they want to have good suppliers that are well prepared. So they usually are not reluctant to share that information. The budget. I ask, well, quite literally ask. There is a great. Oh, I ask we ask straight away as soon as we pick up the call. The third question after "How are you?" and this line is terrible, whatever, is what is the budget? We usually have a preamble of something like, it would help us understand the size of the project if you did give us a budget, rather than us trying to guess it the other way around. By and large, we don't get it. However, and again, the bigger the organization, the bigger the project manager, and they don't want to have too much variation in the proposals. If the variation in the proposal is huge, they will look silly. So in some ways, they will kind of give you some hints before it goes upwards of what the budget is. There is a great book by Mike Monteiro about design, which is Design is a Job. And he makes a fantastic point there about just ask, do not think twice before approaching the money situation. Just, we got to get paid for it. We charge for our time, that's all we have. We don't sell licenses. So just ask them. In some cases, they will hint. Even if they kind of give you a ballpark, it will still be helpful. Yeah, sure. Whenever I felt that the messages were not coming through, were not being understood at all, the main message against the main differentiator of Umbraco in terms that the business person can understand is the fact that it is future friendly. I mean, we call it future friendly, you can call it future proof or whatever it is, but the fact that it will change, it will grow with you. Sometimes an organization, a company will come in and they want something tactical. They want something that it's a microsite. They want something that's done now and gone tomorrow. Not a good fit. There is sometimes there's architectural issues. It's just incompatible with what is out there. Hardly ever. There's usually some kind of web service that is, that can sit in the middle and do the job. And sometimes it is the people are not. You just don't gel with the people. It can be overly bureaucratic. It can be It is important here to kind of remember that coming from a .NET background, the entire CMS, the entire community, we talk a lot. We kind of expect a level of engagement with IT. If IT is completely under the thumb, especially of marketing or something else, chances are you're not going to get very far, even if you do win the project. I mean, that's probably it, and it's not very specific. It's per case. In terms of requirements and stuff like that, Umbraco can do pretty much everything. I mean, you can sculpt it to do anything that you want. Yeah. No. I don't think it's less. I just haven't noticed a trend that I can identify. It seems to me that If an organization is already invested in some kind of Windows Server infrastructure, there is going to be a vocal, if not powerful, a vocal CTO presence, and they're going to be there in the room. In those cases, there might be an equally strong, and I'm thinking of a particular situation now, particularly vocal marketing or commercial director, and they will be married. See, the problem is that they're married to a system that is already out there and all the friends are using. They will insist up to a point, but not too much. You can help them along. But to answer directly the initial question, I haven't noticed enough to kind of spot a trend, no. It's a good reason for that, though. I think that very much like the philosophy of the system, of the CMS, it is meant to kind of make developers happy to a certain extent, agencies, designers, and then it then becomes our job to go and sell it outwards. So I would, if Umbraco started putting great big banners on the front page talking about experiential marketing and all these kind of fluffy things, I just think it would do us a disservice. I think that's our job.